everybody. It's me, Darren, and Matt over here on the other side of me, and we're going to start our interview with Kelly Minton.
Good evening.
Who is here with us, and we're going to do our interview that everybody's been talking about and what we've been asking our questions to you guys to fill in, and we have those wonderful questions here, and we're going to go from there. Matt's going to be the one doing the conversation this time with Kelly, and I'm going to be sitting over here and just moderating and seeing where we go. Kelly, how's it going?
Fine, thank you. Better tonight than last time we had this schedule.
I bet. Things have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
And you look a lot better.
You're right. I don't know if we should clue them in, but last time we were scheduled last Monday, right?
Yep.
And that's when I got bit by a dog out in the Hunter's Run area of the city. So ended up at the hospital, and I appreciate you guys. You helped me out.
Oh, no worries.
Took my Jeep up to Bailey for me, so I appreciate that very much.
problem.
So thanks for that. And I'm okay. It really wasn't. I mean, it was pretty traumatic at the time, but
It
took a
looked
day
a lot
off and
worse.
rest, and had 11 stitches total. So, any rate, so I'm better tonight. So
It definitely looked a lot worse than it was.
Yeah.
Well, the passing out was the bad part.
Yeah, well.
I don't think if I'd passed out, it would. I thought, I was coming here to clean myself up.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought. And then when I got out of the Jeep, it was like, oh,
It gave us a little scary.
yeah.
But we're glad you're right there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you're walking, so that's a
Definitely,
good
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Matt,
All right, well, Bob from French Lake wants to know, says meth is a big problem. What would you do to help reduce the meth manufacturing and usage rate if you were re-elected?
I've talked about this several times during the campaign, and what I started doing before the campaign even started was talking to our state representatives and also our state senators, because other jurisdictions have had good luck with making the main ingredient, main precursor in methamphetamine, which is pseudoephedrine, a controlled substance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, back in the early 70s, it was a controlled substance. And if you can't make methamphetamine without it. And there's been legislation the past couple of sessions to do it, but it's not passed. I believe the state police support that, although they can't lobby the state legislature. I think if you talk to a state policeman or anybody that deals with methamphetamine in the Indiana State Police, they would tell you that that's one of the things that they support. So I've talked to them, and the state representatives I've talked to is Steve Davison. He, I think, is coming around. I also talked to Brent Steele, who's a state senator. He used to be our state senator, but now, at least in part of the county, but now he's in Lawrence County. And we met at a third house, and there were several people there. And I think he came away from that convinced that that was something that we should try. In fact, he had an editorial within the next couple of days in the Bedford paper supporting that, at least for a period of time. He said maybe like we could do it for a year or two and see if it really does cut down on the meth labs. And then I've talked to the current candidates for state senator. Our current senator here is Richard Young, and then I've talked to also Aaron Hounchin and Tad Whitus, who used to be a judge in Harrison County, and they support it. And then also Lloyd Arnold has indicated that he would support that. So I'm real hopeful that I'll get done next time, because and some people say, oh, well, we're getting this crystal meth, and I understand that, and that's obviously something we have to deal with.
right.
But the thing is, with the manufacture of methamphetamine, what you get is the hazards that go with that. Not only, to the policemen that come and have to clean it up, and there's a cost involved with that. And they call them clandestine labs, or, lab is a generous term. What they are is, they're generally pop bottles or some sort of glass containers, and then the chemicals you put in it, and you may be familiar with them, but there's nothing. You would never think that was going to make a drug that you want to ingest into your system. But when you make that through the clandestine lab, and now they have smaller labs that were called one-pots, and when you make those, you're creating a hazard in and of itself making it, and then you're creating hazardous waste afterwards. And you don't want that, because not only does it affect the police officers that may come in contact with, but the people that live there.
Right.
I mean, and there's maybe children involved. In fact, a large amount of time there are children involved, and then they're adults, and then a large amount of time, they dump them on the side of the road, or they rent the place, and then you have a problem for the homeowner, or for the homeowner, for the landlord. So all those things, you know, I understand that, you know, that's not a cure-all, but like I said, there's a couple of states that have done it, and even some local jurisdictions that have tried to do it, but through ordinances, as opposed to a state statute, and I don't think it's a thing the federal government should be dealing with really, because, you know, it's a state situation. States should address it the way they want to go from a law enforcement standpoint. But those jurisdictions that have done it, and the one that comes to mind most readily, in my mind, is Washington State, and their methamphetamine labs, so-called Qn&A labs, dropped, you know, to just a few, and now recently Indiana has become the top methamphetamine seizure lab. The top lab, you know, the top lab making state in the country, which is not something you want to aspire to.
No.
And you speak of easy to get the ingredients, and the legislature has acted on the past. I'm not being critical of them, they've acted.
Yeah.
And because pseudoephedrine used to be you could buy unlimited quantities, well, they made it now so you have to buy, you can only buy in certain amounts over a period of time, which you may have purchased products with pseudoephedrine, and you have to sign for it also. And those are a couple of reasons, is they want to control it somewhat, but it's not a controlled substance like a controlled substance like a prescription drug. But the way that the folks that make a methamphetamine have got around it is they'll get a group together, and then they'll go out and purchase.
Right.
You know, and they know what quantity they can purchase, and so, and they've also made a log so that police can go on, a computerized internet-based system, so the police can go on and see who has purchased methamphetamine in that area. And it's a investigative tool that they use to see, oh, you know, John Doe, we think he might be making methamphetamine, and we go on and see how much methamphetamine, or how many products with ephedrine or pseudoephedrine he's purchased in the past several weeks or months or even year, and then maybe you know some of his associates, so you can also kind of check there. And you know, it's not unusual for somebody to buy a product with ephedrine in it or pseudoephedrine in it, but it is unusual for them to buy in a large quantity, and it's very unusual for them to buy some in Bedford and then go to Mitchell and then go to Paoli in the same day or the same week, and that's like a red flag to law enforcement. So, but getting back to the original question is, I believe that making products with ephedrine, pseudoephedrine in them, a controlled substance, will largely take care of the clandestine labs and the one-pot labs, which are just a offspring of the clandestine labs. Now, will that cure our methamphetamine problem? You know, it will help in the fact that it not only is it's a drug problem, but it's a social services problem too, because then you have DCS involved, there's kids involved because they've been exposed to these chemicals. You have, of course, the exposure to the police officers, and like I said, you have the landlord that has to do some cleanup on his house.
That's something a lot of people don't really take into account when they're making the meth and stuff, is even if they're cooking it in a separate room or something and the kid's in another bedroom, he's still getting that contact off of it. He's still...
And if it's not their house, they don't have anything invested in it. And, you know, there are some laws about cleaning up the houses. I don't know, that would be something the health department is charged with enforcing, and I know they struggle with it because you go to a cleanup company and they want, you know, not hundreds of dollars, but thousands of dollars to clean something up. And there also is a law about selling a motor vehicle that's had a methamphetamine lab in it. And so you're supposed to give full disclosure about that. Now, how those things are enforced or how people are paying attention to those, you know, those are more civil things that could affect somebody's liability if they sell a house or a car without disclosing that. But you put those in place and they're difficult to enforce. But so, and then, you know, the crystal meth's a different, you know, whole different thing altogether. But this, making those things a controlled substance would help the methamphetamine that is made or manufactured. And like you said, that's the only drug that I know of that you can manufacture from things you buy at local retailers. You know, you can't make heroin, you can't make cocaine, you can't make marijuana. I mean, you can grow it obviously, but methamphetamine, that's why it's so much different. That's why we've been fighting the battle for ever since I've been prosecutor and a little bit before. So it's going on 20 years now, and if you read the local papers, it doesn't seem like it's getting a lot better. And and we have tried the more, what I would guess are more traditional methods, and that's treatment, which, if somebody, they don't have much prior criminal history, and they come in and they've got, meth charges, either possession or, have made their own or trying to make their own, then we try to go that route and try to get them cleaned up. If they're motivated to do that, obviously you can't rehabilitate somebody that doesn't want to be rehabilitated. And, and maybe the first go around, you do try treatment or probation, but then, and then we try incarceration. There's a lot of people in the Department of Corrections, from Orange County and from the state that have been manufacturing methamphetamine. And there's a lot of pressure on the DOC to, whether we build another prison or whether we, do something else. So there's a cost involved with that too, because people say, oh, well, you can lock them up. Well, yeah, you can lock them up, but, then you have that whole issue of, are our prisons big enough?
And that adds a lot of cost to the state, which increases taxes, which makes people more angry.
and so that, I think, that's, all those things are good things, but if you could take away that opportunity for them to make it by making pseudoephedrine and ephedrine a controlled substance. Now, what's the downside, to that? Well, people would have to get a prescription for some allergy or cold medicine.
Yeah.
And, I can understand that. I've heard of people, like, they'll go to their doctor and they will have allergies, or, this time of year you get them in southern Indiana, and their doctor will write them a prescription, and they don't have to go to the doctor every time they need a refill.
Right.
They can just call in, and so it's less onerous for them. Because some people are concerned about that. Some people are concerned about just signing their name when they buy that product, which is understandable. You don't want the state in your business, and I certainly respect that and understand that. But the cost to the state of cleaning up these labs, of enforcing the laws, and the DCS being involved is a high thing. Yeah. So it cuts across a lot of social, economic things too. I've seen people, just in this year, I've seen mothers give up their children. I've seen men with good paying jobs for Orange County, $15, $20 an hour, give everything up that they had because they were addicted to methamphetamine. So you can't overestimate the problem that it is, because there's never been a drug like that. It's so highly addictive, and the euphoria and the feeling, the high you get is, I guess, you can't really do without it once you have it. And I'm not naive enough to think that people aren't, there's a certain aspect or a certain part of society that's going to be prone to substance abuse, and whether that's alcohol or whether that's illegal drugs or something else. But that being said, you can't, you still have to take steps to address it. And if you can eliminate them making it and eliminate some of those social costs associated with it, then I think that would be the way to go, without abandoning the traditional methods. I'm not saying, and I don't think that'll completely take care of any drug problem that we have in Orange County or southern Indiana, but like Senator Steele says, why not give it a try? What do we have to lose, really? And then we can, he suggested a year or two, you try it, make it a prescription drug like it was in the early 70s, and see how the cost of enforcing the laws and cleaning up meth labs go down, and then let's go from there. And I fully support that, and I think the folks that I've talked to that are candidates and our current state reps, I think for the most part they're on board. So I'm hopeful that we'll get that done. Of course, this legislative session is over. The next one will be next winter, January. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to, that will get done, and we'll see some drop and some help in that aspect of it. Until then, we'll have to use the traditional methods of law enforcement, and that's, go out and find them and arrest them and clean them up. And so, and that's what we'll continue to do, and continue to use those, incarceration and treatment, and continue to work as hard as we can to, educate people about how bad it is too. Because, like I said, it ruins people's lives. And it amazes me every day, the people that I see you know, that have just got hooked on
And
it.
it's the ones you least expect.
Sometimes
A lot
it
of
is.
times,
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, there's certain part of the society that's prone to abuse substances, but the ones I've seen lately is what really gives me pause. And there's people that have seemingly kicked the habit that
Yeah.
have gone back.
That's one thing I've tried pushing onto a lot of younger people I know, without naming any names, is, you know, you try this stuff once and it's gonna hook you. It's just that kind of drug. You can't treat it like other things. It's not like a drink of alcohol or something like that where you can go try it one night and then realize that you don't like it the next morning and just stop. It's already, I mean, the minute that stuff hits your system, it's,
Well, I think it affects
yeah.
the way your brain
Yeah.
works, you know, and you've gotta have it, so.
I mean, of course, prolonged use is way worse than just, it's still just, I mean, the minute you have it, you just need more.
Well, yeah, you said prolonged use, you see the mugshots in the paper.
Yeah.
And you wonder these people can't be thinking right, because this doesn't make you more attractive.
Not at
And
all, no.
You lose your teeth, you have open sores, most of them look, you know,
Aged
disheveled,
15 years.
you know, and just, yeah, it ages you quickly, and you may see pictures of before and after.
Yeah.
How that, you know, like you said, you try it once, you don't wanna try it once,
No,
just stay
just
away from
don't.
it.
Exactly.
It's not like other things. Leading into that one, he had another question about prescription medication. What would you try to do to reduce the abuse of prescription pills?
There's I think a couple of things, and that's a problem. I don't know that it's as large just because, you know, there's not the clandestine lab thing, but certainly it's a serious problem. And a couple of anecdotes that could share with you that illustrate the problem is, I have a couple of years ago, there was a gentleman that was arrested for possession of a controlled substance, a prescription drug. And it was a D felony, and he had some just laying loose in his vehicle, and he was taken to jail. And you know, his dad called me the next couple of days, and he said, "Well, he didn't do anything wrong. I gave him those drugs. I gave him that. It was some sort of painkiller." And so, I mean, that's the thinking.
Yeah.
Is that, well, you know, he didn't steal it or he didn't forge a prescription.
Right.
He had a sore back, so I gave him some painkillers. They were mine, like they were mine to give away. And that's the sort of the way people think about it. And you know, have you ever been to a family function and somebody says, "Oh, I'm going on a trip. I really get nervous when I fly. Oh, I have some Xanax."
Right.
I mean, you got to change that way of thinking in people, because it doesn't have that stigma that illegal drugs do.
Right.
And because it's prescribed by a doctor, you know, because it's safe. But I shouldn't be taking Darren's prescription drugs or mass prescription drugs, period, whether it's
Right.
something that we have as a culture have become comfortable with, whether that's a painkiller or whether that's something that relieves stress. We shouldn't just, you know, we have to combat that, first of all, that thinking that it's okay, because it's not okay, because you don't know how that may affect you.
Right.
You
There's a
shouldn't.
reason the doctor
you
has
sh-
to prescribe it to you. You can't
That's
just go
exactly
get it over
right.
the counter.
You shouldn't be passing those things out. So that is a cultural thing that we have to educate the public that it's not okay to do that. And that's difficult sometimes to overcome. And then the safety aspect of it, like you said, because they think it's prescribed by a doctor, well, it must be okay. Well, that's not true. The other thing that I think, the public education part of it, I think is a big piece, because, you know, if it comes in that little bottle, then well, it must be okay to take. Well, it's not if it's not yours, because you don't know how your body is, you don't know how it will react, and you shouldn't be taking drugs that are prescribed to somebody else, whether, you know, it's from your mom or your grandma or
Well,
your
a lot
best
of those
friend.
medications are based on, you know, your height, weight, how old you are, your metabolism.
What your allergies are.
Yeah.
And
Right.
what other medication you're taking too. I mean, all that takes as a factor, but yeah.
I mean, we found out the hard way. We had a doctor prescribe my wife a different medication that actually interacted with some of her other medications, caused her to have a massive seizure and stop breathing on me. I mean, I'm sitting there doing CPR on my wife because the doctor prescribed her another pill. I mean, it wasn't necessarily his fault. Maybe we weren't clear on all the medication she was on. There were some interactions that kind of changed the threshold, but it's stuff like that you guys really need to look out for, because it could just be from one pain pill. I mean, it doesn't take much to cause that stuff to happen, especially if you're on other medication.
But when that father said that to me, and he had just admitted to me that he committed a criminal act
Right.
of dealing in a controlled substance. But to him, it was his drug, and he could give it to his son because his son had an ailment.
Right.
And that to me shows you how that culturally is how we think. We have to overcome that. The second thing that I think the legislature, they've already taken steps through a program called Inspect. And the internet obviously is a good thing. I mean, it allows, like in the methamphetamine, you have a register and police have access to that. It's sort of the same way in Inspect. Doctors have access to this database that can tell you if Matt Phillips, when you last got a prescription.
Right.
And if you're doctor shopping so that you can get, pain pills either to abuse yourself or to sell to your friends, then they can see that, he's got a prescription yesterday in Seymour, and he got a prescription, he's trying to get a prescription here today in Paoli,
Yeah.
and they can, address that. So they will know when you got prescriptions. And that, cutting it off at the source is very effective, obviously. And so that's in place already. And so the legislature has seen that it's a problem, and they put that in place to try to combat that. So those two things, I think, will go, a long way toward addressing the problem. And that, again, that is culturally knowing that it's not all right to take somebody else's prescription drugs or to give them to somebody. And second of all, to try to cut it off the source and try to people that are, doctor shopping so they get drugs to resell or abuse through the Inspect system will help immensely. There's a website from the Attorney General's office that has excellent advice and about combating the problem, talking to your kids about it, and that's www.bitterpill.in.gov, and that's the Attorney General of Indiana, his website, because obviously they recognize it's a problem too. And there are, again, you can't, I don't think you'll cut it all off, but you can certainly, you can't throw up your hands either and say, well, we can't fight it. And I think the legislature realizes that. And then eventually, when they get to me, it's too late to stop it, because then they've been charged, or then they've already probably abused it. They bought it, or they've sold it, or they have drugs that aren't theirs. Where I think the legislature thinks, and I agree, that you have to cut it off is at the source. And that's, again, you're gonna have people that are able to get around the system somehow, but you still have to put those safeguards in effect in order to try to at least slow it down, and if not stop it. It'll stop a few people, and it'll slow down a few more people, and then, hopefully, you start curing the problem, or at least it's not as big a problem as it is now. And so, I think those two things, and I encourage your listeners to get on to that website, and it has, you can read it at your leisure, obviously, and it has great ideas for addressing the problem and talking, to family and friends about it, and what a big problem it is, and how you were saying earlier, how it's not safe for you to take somebody else's prescription drug.
Right.
All right, then Kelly from French Lick asks, what is the biggest issue or concern for you coming back in as a prosecutor? Was it something that you're really passionate about to try to get going or fix?
Yeah, it was pretty open-ended question, so I'd assume it's like anything that either community or anything you've seen in the past or that you've dealt with, something that's current, that's a big issue to you right now or a concern. What would that be?
Well, I think there are a couple of things, and we talked about the methamphetamine problem, and that really is, it needs to be addressed, and we've talked about it at length. But again, when I've seen just this year, what I've seen with the mothers giving up their kids and men giving up their families and good jobs because they were addicted to meth, we obviously need to address that problem. It's something that people can't handle on their own when they get addicted to it, and so we need to take steps as a community, not only as the prosecutor's office or the court system, but as a community, like Matt was saying, to just let people know that methamphetamine is not something you want to mess with. You don't even want to think about it or be around it or think about taking it. The other thing that is going to be important in the coming months and years is that the legislature recently passed a bill to reform the criminal code, and that's going to take effect July 1st. and there's gonna be a large curve for the system to learn about the new criminal code reform. And we're going up here in a couple of weeks to start educating prosecutors. And the prosecutors then are going to have to educate, police officers, law enforcement, and then of course the defense attorneys will have to be educated, and the judges will have to be educated, and then that'll have to filter down to the public. But there's going to be some big changes made in the sentencing guidelines, in the classes of misdemeanors and felonies. Right now there's four classes of felonies. There's going to be more classes of felonies. The one that comes to mind is they're going to change. In Indiana right now we have 1 degree of theft. That's a D felony. If you steal 100,000, well, after you get to a certain dollar amount. But if you shoplift something from a local retailer, that's a theft. If you steal $10,000, that's a theft. They're both Class D felonies. The new criminal code has that graduated. I understand that's the way it is in the state of Kentucky, so it's different, different levels of crimes for different dollar values of what you take. So that's a change. There'll be more misdemeanors, more felonies, more levels of those. So there's going to be a period of transition there where some people are going to be under the old code, or the code we have now, and then after that July 1st, people are going to be under this new code. So how that's going to work out and how that law is going to be applied, I think is an unknown at this point.
Right.
And so that will be a challenge not only for the prosecutor's office, but for the courts and for law enforcement. So I think the ability to work together, all those folks, not only law enforcement, but the courts, the prosecutor's office, and the defense attorneys, all to work together to try to implement that the new criminal code is going to be a challenge, and one that, I'm not sure I'd say I look forward to it, but it's something that has to be done. And the criminal code hadn't been redone since the late 70s, so it was time. And there were a lot of things that needed to be addressed in it, and the legislature, as in it with any legislature, I think they would tell you it's not a perfect bill. It wasn't perfect for prosecutors. Prosecutors fought hard to get some things that they thought they needed in there. And I'm sure the Public Defender's Council doesn't think it's perfect for people charged with crimes either, but that's the way legislature's made. People have differing arguments, and they give up something to get something. So that's going to be July 1st, and that's going to be a big challenge for everybody, including myself and my office. So those two things would be things that I would answer your question. The methamphetamine and the new criminal code bill becoming effective July 1st.
That'll make things interesting. We had an anonymous from Paoli that asked, can you explain to all of us what has been done while you have been prosecutor and why you think you are the best choice?
Well, I kind of like to start at the front of the office and work my way up, because the prosecutor's office, I'm the prosecutor, but the prosecutor's office consists of several people in there. And we have several things that we do, and primarily when you think of the prosecutor, you think of prosecuting criminals and going to court and representing the state of Indiana in criminal actions. But starting with Keely Watts, she's the receptionist, and she also collects bad checks. And I'm, when I came in, there was the bad checks were being collected, but it was they weren't being collected in as an efficient manner as one would have hoped. And so I'm very proud of the fact that we have a handle on that now, that a check comes in and we take whatever means to collect that check, which is important. My family ran a small business in Paoli for 30 years, and I understand that if you write somebody a bad check, that's the same as taking money out of their pocket. That's it's not sticking a gun in their face, but it's the same as taking almost the same as sticking your hand in their cash register and taking money. So that's important to them. And so she does that. She does a great job at that. And then of course, if people don't pay, then they can be prosecuted. And in Orange County, we file a theft charge. And people say, well, why don't you file a check reception? Well, theft has a negative connotation to it, and it's a felony, and it's easier to get people extradited if we need to get them extradited. So I'm proud of that, the fact that I think that we do a good job. I know that we do a good job. I've actually had merchants that have businesses in 2 counties, and I won't name the counties, but they say, well, we bring your checks to you. because we know that you'll collect them. And so that's a compliment to Keeley and also to collection efforts in Holly Huddleston as the chief deputy. So we make that a priority. And not so much to put people in jail, but to get the merchant their money. That's
Right.
our priority.
Right.
And merchants, let me tell you, they want the money, and they also appreciate that you collect $25 on top, because they've had some time and effort invested in, they may have sent their own letter, they may have, they obviously brought it to our office to be collected, so they've got some effort involved in it, so that compensates them, and it's a statutory thing where you can collect it, but it compensates them for their time and effort in somebody writing them a cold check. Keeley also, she does the infraction deferral and the pretrial diversion, and that's, again, something created by statute, but a portion of that comes back to the office. And if you get a traffic ticket, you may have heard of infraction deferral. Basically what it means is by statute, we can hold on to the ticket for 6 months. And after 6 months, you don't have any other moving violations, then we dismiss the ticket. There's an advantage to the driver in that it doesn't become a pointable offense on your license, and it doesn't show up so that when the insurance company reviews your driving record, they may not see it.
Right.
And there's an advantage to the county, and that's the more that money stays here. We're able to use that infraction deferral, and also certain misdemeanors can be deferred. It's the same sort of thing. You can either hold on to the charge for a year, and people may have to do some community service, so they may have to do some substance abuse counseling, but after that year, for a lot of offenses that are first time, they pay a fee, and some of that fee stays locally. That is an advantage, because somebody that picks up an illegal consumption or a PI or something that may not reoccur, and they don't have any criminal record, then maybe they're going to go in the military, or they're wanting to go to school, or just don't want a criminal record, then that allows them the opportunity to, if they comply with the terms of the pretrial diversion, then that allows them the opportunity to get through the situation without a criminal conviction. And why that's important to our office is that we get a portion of that back, and we use that instead of county general fund tax dollars. We use that to run the office administratively, to buy postage, to pay the phone bill and things like that. So it's a user system, so that Darren's not paying for somebody else that had a speeding ticket. I mean, they're paying their own way, and again, it's by statute. It's not something that I created or made up as punishment. And there's only a certain amount that can be the fee can be, and things like that. So that's what Keeley takes care of, and I'm proud that, and the accomplishment is that we don't use very many county tax dollars to run the office, and that program has to be, again, you have to administer it to make sure that people are paying the fees as they're ordered. You make sure you're putting the right people on it, that you can statutorily. And if you go back a door or two, then Alex Long is the secretary to the prosecutors, and I'm proud of the fact that we do an efficient job. And you have to, when you have somebody in jail, somebody arrested, you have to get it turned around. That means you have to get the reports in, you have to get the whatever photographs or whatever things that go with the report. You have to get in so that you can get that charge filed in court. And so and it has to be filed. Generally, the courts like to have it the same day.
Right.
But sometimes that's difficult for policemen that have worked the night before, to get a report and get everything into our office so that we can get charges filed the next day. But we do a good job of getting it filed within at least 48 hours and encouraging the police to get their report to us as soon as possible. And so that we can work efficiently with the courts. They have to bring that person up if they're in jail in a certain time period and advise them of their rights and things like that. So she has a lot of experience. She's been doing it for a long time. I really appreciate the fact, and I'm proud of the fact that we do that in an efficient manner. And it's not only fair to the defendant, but it's for the courts and also for the policemen. Sometimes they don't make an arrest, they'll just send a report. Well, I like to get that turned around too, so that they're, either if there's a victim involved, they're not left hanging. If there's a police officer involved, they want to know one way or another we're going to file charges, or that we need something else. And so I'm proud of the accomplishment that we run an efficient office as far as getting criminal charges filed. Alex Long is a big part of that. Of course, the deputy prosecutor is Holly Huddleston. She handles most all the cases in Superior Court, which is Class D felonies right now and below. Pretty soon it'll be another class felony. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to be called when the July 1st comes. But we do a good job with that. Holly and I do a good job representing the state in the courts of the Circuit Court, which is Judge Blanton, and the Superior Court, which is Judge Cloud. And we have a good trial record, and we've tried cases. Of course, the majority of cases in this county, and I think any jurisdiction probably in the country, are resolved through plea negotiations and eventually a resolution through plea agreements. And I've seen statistics anywhere from 95 to 98%. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, the system could not operate without that. And but you also have to be ready to try cases if that needs to be done, if you can't reach an agreement. And our office does that, has done that on a consistent basis since I've been in office, and have had great success doing that, and so I'm proud of that. One other aspect of the prosecutor's office that is sometimes a thankless job is we also have some duties that are from a federal statute in child support collection. Now, I wish that we didn't have those, because I think that is part of the societal breakdown in the country, and is that we have to coerce people into paying their child support, which I don't like. I mean, obviously, people should pay their child support without having us, have to chase after them. But through a variety of things, and Carrie Beck is the child support administrator, and of course myself, I handle most of the courtroom time on child support cases. But through that, most people refer to it as 4D. It's legislation through Social Security that we're charged with enforcing child support, establishing paternity orders, or establishing paternity, establishing child support orders and medical support orders, and also enforcing those in court. And so that's what we're charged with. We have a lot of tools available to us that we didn't have when I started prosecuting 20 years ago. That's as I started, I was a child support prosecutor over in Jefferson County, Indiana. And but now we have a lot. We can collect taxes, intercept taxes, which has been in place for a while, but now it's almost automatic. We used to, you had to certify it to the federal government. Now you don't have to. It's just if the system shows you're over a certain dollar amount behind, then we can intercept your taxes. Lottery winnings, you can suspend licenses. So there's a variety of ways to do it. We do an efficient job at it. Sometimes, like I said, you don't make a lot of people happy doing that, because you're forcing somebody to do something they generally they should want to do, but sometimes they don't want to. They don't want to pay child support because they think the order's too much, or they don't get to see the child, or for whatever reason. So and then if you don't get it soon enough, or you have somebody that either won't work or is working for cash money or something, it's hard to enforce those. The best case scenario is somebody that is working, doing income withholding, and get the support paid. And sometimes those are the hardcore cases that are hopefully a small percentage of what we do. But I'm proud of the fact that we do an efficient job. And I can tell you, if people have income, and people are willing to work, then we're going to bring them to court and make them responsible to pay their child support. Now there's going to be like I said, that small percentage that are either going to jump from job to job, or they're not going to work at all, or they're going to work for money that we can't ever get a hold of, that are going to be difficult. And that being said, we have to continue to try to do our best to enforce those, either through contempt citations and also through criminal charges if need be. But right now, we do the best that we can do, I believe, and do that efficiently, and trying to get those folks to pay their support. And again, I wish we didn't have to do it, because there's something wrong with us having to coerce people and having to beg them almost, or hold them in contempt. And I know some people get down on their luck and can't pay. I understand that. We work with those folks, but you need to support your children, I think, is the bottom line. And so those, and again, a lot of people, when they think of the prosecutor's office, they think, oh, that's the guy that prosecutes, criminal cases. And that's true, but there's a lot of other things that go on in our office. And I think another thing that I'm proud of is our relationship with law enforcement and our relationship with the courts. Now, to a certain extent, you have to be separate and apart from the courts. But that being said, you do have to work with them. And so you have to have a good enough relationship with them that you can work together to schedule things, to you know, well, just like I said, you're there on a daily basis, so you have to be able to get along with them professionally to do those things. And that's one thing I'm proud of too, is the professionalism in the office. And I like to talk to people, you know, so that have a concern with the office. So if you call me, you know, I'm not in some, you know, my office is in the back, but I'll call you back. Or if you want an appointment with me, I'll take an appointment with you. I've told people more than once, you know, a lot of times victims will hear something. They'll say, oh, I heard they got out, or I heard that they said this, or I heard this was going to happen. And I'll say, you know, just call me, you know, and I'll tell you the truth. Because people, for whatever reason, they like to talk about what we do in the system. And I'll tell them over and over, I said, just call me and I'll tell you what the truth of the matter is.
Because you watch Law and Order.
Because you'll get it from the horse's mouth. And you know, I don't always know when people get out of jail, when they're able to post bond. In fact, I usually don't, because that's not my job to take bond or to, you know, be notified when it's posted. I mean, there's other people that are in a better position to do that, but oftentimes they'll hear that. Oftentimes they'll hear that, you know, they were given a plea offer that was this, and you know, so I want to be accessible, and that's something that I do take pride in, is that I am accessible. I'll talk to you in the office, on the phone, in person, and I would like to be able to explain myself. You know, I understand the job. People, you know, you're a public servant, so people are going to want to talk to you, and they're going to want to maybe understand why you did what you did, and that's part of the job. And I want to talk to them. I want to, if I have to explain myself why I did X and not Y, then I want to be able to do that. And I think, you know, that I've done a good job of that over the years, and want to continue to do that. That's something that I'm proud of also.
All right, good. I think that's all the questions we had from the page. Did you have anything you wanted to add? Something you wanted to say to anybody?
Well, I would just like to say that I was, a little bit of my background for those that may not know me. I was born right here in Orange County at the Paley Hospital. I have lived here my whole life, except for the time that I was away at IU. I have a business degree from Indiana University in 1985. I graduated from Orleans High School in '81. And then for a couple of years I worked in Indianapolis while I was trying to decide whether to go back to law school, and also there was some financial part of that. I couldn't go to school for 7 straight years because I was taking care of it myself. I was paying for it. And so I worked a couple of years and then decided to go back to law school. And I always wanted to be back in Orange County to be prosecutor. It's something I'd aspired to since probably elementary school. And I just appreciate the people of Orange County giving me a chance to serve as a prosecutor for these last almost 16 years now. And I want to continue to serve you, and so I hope that you'll vote for me on May the 6th.
How much time do we have?
We still got some time. Yeah, we got about 5 minutes.
All right, any other questions?
Well, I'd had a few people posting about informants and stuff, people that are, you know, informing on other people.
Okay.
I don't know what's the technical term for it, but
Sometimes they refer to them as confidential informants.
Yeah.
In the jail, they have other names for
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they're talking about. But a lot of people were concerned, saying that there were people who were not very good people that really deserved to be in jail, but because they turned on a few other people, that they were just getting out for nothing. I don't know much more about it. Like I said, this is all just hearsay. It's a few things I've seen a lot of people posting on. I don't know if you had anything.
The way that, really that's something that is driven by the police officers. And if they have someone that has got themselves in some legal trouble, and generally that person that is inclined to, may volunteer that, hey, I can give you information about this. And then if that police officer, the police officer has no authority to make any promises to them or you know, negotiate their charges or whatever. But if but a police officer, you know, he wants information about crime in the county. And the people that know about crime in the county are people that are associated with criminals in the county, and that's people that get arrested. So, you know, there's that old saying about, you know, if you want to, what is it, if you want to catch a bear, you got to go out in the woods, or if you want to, you know, kill a rat, you got to go to the sewer, or there's all kinds of different sayings about it. But it's sometimes a necessity in the system to talk to those people, and then whether informants or confidential informants, and it's not, you know, just Orange County that system is used, it's throughout, you know, throughout the criminal justice system. There are, you know, of course, downsides to that, because sometimes you do, in order to get that information, you know, what the policeman will then do is he'll come to me and say, hey, Kelly, so-and-so cooperated, or so-and-so told us this and this. And you do have to factor that in when you're resolving cases against somebody. That doesn't mean they get a free pass. Right, but, I mean, you have to say, okay, well, they cooperated. And we always want people to cooperate, because that's good for us. It makes a better case, makes the things easier for us from a prosecution standpoint if they want to give a statement to the police about their involvement, if they want to give a statement about other people's involvement. And so, again, that's something that's police driven. And I always defer to the police officers, whether it be the detectives or even the road officers, who generally hand that off to the detective. But whether they want to talk to that person and receive their information, because obviously if that person wants to give information, they're going to expect something in return, or they wouldn't be given it. And whether that's leniency or getting their bond reduced or whatever, then, you know, the officer will come and tell me, he'll basically say, well, so-and-so cooperated. And I didn't make him any promises, which the officer doesn't have any authority to do. But, you know, I'm just telling you that they cooperated. But I can't say that, you know, it's one of many factors that you consider in and how to resolve the cases, that they were cooperative. I mean, you know, you have to consider their criminal history. You have to consider the strength of the case right before you. They cooperated. Was there other defendant involved? A lot of times in those methamphetamine cases especially, there'll be two people in the same house. Well, you can't really fingerprint that stuff you made meth with. So you have to, you know, have one person take responsibility for the dope. The other person may, you know, cooperate and say, you know, it wasn't mine, it was, you know, my boyfriend's that was doing it, or my fiance, or my uncle, or whatever. You may have charged them both because you can't, you know, because what could happen is they point the fingers at each other, and then you're like, okay. So generally, in those cases, you don't make a deal with somebody, but if they want to cooperate, then, you know, and they're not only given information that incriminates them, because they're saying, yeah, I knew about it, or I partook in it, but they're given information that incriminates somebody else, and you again take that into account. I don't think there's a lot of police officers or a lot of prosecutors that like that process, but it's part of it. I mean, it's something that goes on, because that's where you get your best information, and it leads to the issuance of search warrants. It leads to the seizure of drugs, stolen property. It leads to further arrest, and I can understand why people, you know, would have struggled with that. But again, it's part of the process, and you know, I don't know that it happens in I wouldn't even say a large percentage of cases, but it's certainly a tool that law enforcement uses to gather information to, you know, investigate crimes and file charges. So, and I think it's necessary. It's been used for a long time, and will continue to be used, because that's the best source of information. But that being said, for the most part, you can't do something just based on the person that's given the information, based on what they say. I mean, the law requires you to somehow, unless that person's been used over and over and over and proved reliable, then you have to somehow corroborate what they say. You know, when corroborate, I mean you have to get something else that they tell you that the guy drives a black car, well, you have to maybe have the officer witness that for themselves or check the registration to see that, he does have a black vehicle. I mean, you have to corroborate things, hopefully firsthand, but in other ways, there's other techniques you can use to corroborate things. So you're not totally basing it on what they say. And then sometimes, obviously, the confidential informant or the informant will not tell you the truth. They're just trying to get to the next, whatever. They're trying to get out so they can get on to the next thing. And, those, most of the time, police officers are, can see right through that and understand that they're not getting good information, or it's stale information, or it's just not useful. So, but again, that's not something that my office makes a decision on. It's mostly the police officers because of the nature of the system, because they're in the investigative part of it. And then they'll pass that along to me, and it's just one of many factors in a criminal case that you'll take into account when trying to figure out a resolution of the case.
Sounds good.
The only one that it was kind of a sheriff's question, but
Alright.
it also came back, it could also be used as a question for you as well.
Okay.
You're talking about training for the July 1st things coming up, and
Yes, sir.
that's the first I've heard about that. So it's gonna be a pretty extensive training.
Yes, sir.
So going along with that, how, if reelected, how do you perceive as continuing education for the training for your office, for the officers in the county, and for any other officials that come in direct contact with you, with the judges and everything else? How's training going to be so that everybody's up to date on everything, not just the new changes going on, but everything that's going to be going along with changes?
Well, of course, the judges have their own judges association.
Right.
That educates them and will educate them. And I know you want to talk about all of that, continuing education and training, but they'll roll out the criminal code reform to them, and so that they'll be trained in it and know how to apply it. Now, ourselves, the prosecutors, we have a conference coming up in May, and then we also have the summer conference in June, and those are going to be dedicated to informing us, educating us about the criminal code reform bill.
Right.
Now, after this May conference, I've already talked to law enforcement. We were at a recent training with DCS, and I've talked to law enforcement about having a training session for them, or sessions if need be. I got some feedback that they would like to do it locally, as opposed to, I think there'll be opportunities probably in southern Indiana and Indianapolis, maybe even through the law enforcement academy when they roll us out. I know the time's getting short here because we're talking about July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
And then doing something in county, I will either do that myself and the chief deputy will do that as far as the criminal code reform bill goes, or that we can get somebody from the Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys Council down here to do maybe not just Orange County, but maybe surrounding counties for law enforcement. I think sometimes having somebody that maybe you don't know telling you about things is sometimes easier than the prosecutor himself telling you. And so, not that I'm averse to doing that, and have done it in the past, and will continue to do it. But so one of those two avenues for the criminal code reform. What we do here locally as far as educating, of course, the law enforcement officers have their continuing education requirements, and they get those either at the Law Enforcement Academy or local seminars. Now, the prosecutor's office has always been supportive of helping them financially, the departments to pay for that. If they, most guys now, they don't want to go somewhere where it requires overnight. They like to go and drive home. They want to get home,
Right.
Because they're gone enough, when they're working as a police officer. So they'll want to do it somewhere, Jasper, or they'll want to do it in Bloomington, or somewhere close where they can be home the next night. So we've helped them paying for that in the past, and we'll continue to do that. The other thing that's just recently become available is online training. And the prosecutor's office, again, through funds, through the infraction deferral and the pretrial diversion, we've been able to pay for the first couple of years of the fee for the online training for all departments, so that you don't have to wait for a certain time when you can go to this training. You can do it in your own time at home or even on your shift, I suppose, if things are quiet or the chief allows it, or certainly in your downtime in the office or at home, you can go online and get some of your continuing education requirements online. Now, there's several things that you can't get online, the handgun training or physical tactics training, things like that you'll still have to get elsewhere. But this allows you some of those other things to get it, and again, the costs to the department are minimal because you don't have that. First of all, you don't have the use of the police car to travel, and you don't have any overnight stays, so you don't have any hotel, lodging, food, and so that's something that everybody can agree with. So that's also another thing that I think the police officers welcome, because it used to be, it seemed like people wanted to go overnight, but anymore is, I don't know if they're aging or they want to be home, whatever. They don't want to do any overnight.
Right.
So they want to do it here and get it done and get their training and get their hours that they need and be up to date on what's new out there. So those things will continue in my administration.
Good. Another thing that we've been looking at, we're over 700 people on Valley.
723 now.
723 people.
I saw where you're trying to get to 1,000. I went
Yeah,
on there today.
that's the goal for 1,000.
That's your next goal. Yeah.
But here lately,
Well, that's more than the population. What's the population of French Lick and West Baden combined?
Well, we're kind of,
over.
we're expanding into, I mean, there's a lot of people from Paoli and.
Well, I saw you had one from Du Bois today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
and there's some that are some of you are originally from French Lick, but I know there's one lady that lives in, I think she's in Wisconsin or North Dakota, but she's originally from French Lick, and she's always on there talking.
Well, don't get me wrong, I know the population of French
Yeah.
Lick and West Baden is more than 700 people. I mean,
Yeah.
it's gotta be several thousand, but still,
Having
that's
that
a big
community,
percentage.
yeah.
it's good. One of we're constantly, Matt and Sam and myself, we're constantly adding new people and everything every day. Here lately, we've been getting a lot of new people, or not, well, of course, new people, but the younger crowd. Some of them are fresh out of high school, but like freshly turned 18. When we're looking at their profiles, because we do look at everybody's profile that clicks that they want to join to make sure that you guys aren't a robot, because we have a couple of them that do that.
Yeah.
But looking at that, some of you that are 18 are fresh out of high school. You've never voted before or anything. How would they vote? We got the primaries coming up for May 6th, and then we got the election, the other election that's coming up in November. For the first time voters and everything that haven't voted before, how do they do it?
Well, first of all, you have to register, and for the primary, we're past the registration deadline. So if you haven't registered to vote for it was April 7th was the deadline.
Yeah.
So if you haven't registered to vote for this election, then it's too late. But but you can go online and register, which is, I think most of the young people you're talking about, that would be the easiest way for them to do it. And that's at www.indianavoters.org. You can go online and register. It's very simple to do. And I've talked to my aunt this week, and she said she went on and got registered, or got her husband registered, I'm not sure, one of those two. And so she was talking about how simple it was. And she's my aunt, so she's she's in her 60s or maybe 70s, so I was impressed that she, was able to do that.
So they can update their townships too?
They can update their information. The other way you can register is, of course, the more traditional way is go to the clerk's office, or I think they ask you every time you get your license renewed if you want to register, or if you're registered. And so that's a good way to get registered. And then, from there, you just go to the polling place, and there's a list of polling places. There was a list in the paper this week, at least in one of the local papers. I think it was the Orleans paper. But you can call your clerk's office, and they'll tell you where to vote. I've had several people ask me. And one of the trends that we've seen here is that they're combining polling places.
Yeah.
And so the large majority of people in French Lick vote at the gym or the senior citizens.
Yeah.
And a majority of the people in West Baden vote at one spot, and it doesn't come to mind right now. But they've combined those polling places or voting places, and which part of it is it cuts some costs because you don't have that many inspectors, et cetera.
And it's so much faster now too. It's not like the old punch cards where you have to sit there and they just boop, 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 and you're done.
I don't see anything wrong with it. I think that's the trend, and especially in bigger jurisdictions, they're really going to that common, polling place. You still have your precincts, but more than one precinct votes at a place.
Right.
And that being said, we still have several outlying smaller precincts that you would, if you voted there in past, Jackson comes to mind, and then up in northern part of county, there's in Dawson, there's just a very rural polling place, that
Right.
little church, and I'm not even sure they have church there.
Yeah, Southeast, they used Southeast Volunteer Fire Department.
Right.
You guys go out there for that.
But depending on where you live, just find where you vote, and like I said, if you're in town, like in Orleans, all the Orleans districts now voted the Christian Church Fellowship Hall, which is called Unity Hall. And so there's at least 3, maybe 4 precincts that vote there. And so that's kind of the trend, but and it's been my experience, if you have moved or you're not sure exactly where you vote, if you go to a precinct, they'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah, they'll
And
help.
with these combined polling places though, you're gonna be in the right place for the most part. Because if you voted in Dawson, you voted in Dawson, or if you vote at Leipzig, you vote there. If you vote
Right.
Jackson or Greenfield, you know that you vote there. But if you've moved in town or just moved into town, you may not be sure. But now with the combined places, then you'll be in the right place if you go to the gym or
Right.
senior citizens or is West Baden. There's not a community center there.
They have the new
I just looked at
hall,
that
I just
this morning.
wonder.
I think it might be.
I think it was over at the town. I think it was over at the town hall where West Baden went to. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Put in the comments that way we can let everybody know. But I thought it was the town hall. And then Paoli, the biggest part of them, they go to. We go to the 4-H building, the new 4-H building that was built out there at the fairgrounds. We go there, and then Southeast is out at the Southeast Fire Department, and then you get the church up there at the Hall of New Orleans, and then the senior citizens down here. Those are the biggest ones I've seen. But anytime after, when people it's like rush hour, between 3:30 and 5, it's always going to be busy. Plan on being there for a little bit. There's a line, but patience is a virtue.
But right now, you can vote, you can still vote at the courthouse if you're not gonna be in town on May the 6th. For the last couple of weeks, they have a polling station at the main courthouse, the big white courthouse in Paley Square, where you can just go in at your leisure from 8 to 12. They take an hour off for lunch, or 1 to 4, through the end of this week, and then Saturday from 8 to noon. And I believe it also goes into next Monday, the day before the election. So if it's just more convenient for you to vote, instead of if you're gonna be at work or you're gonna be out of town or like Darren was saying, you can't get there till late, you can go in and vote at pretty much, at your leisure, and there won't be any lines there, I can tell you. So, still have that opportunity this week to get there and vote. So, if you can't be around on election day, I would encourage you to do that, or if it's just more convenient for you to stop in the courthouse, I would encourage you to do that and vote. It's obviously very important to me. It's very important to exercise your right as a citizen to vote, and I would encourage you to do so. Not only in this election because it affects me, but every election, to have a voice in what goes on in the county, in the state, and in the country.
This is the time where your parents and everybody else have told you that if you don't vote, you can't gripe. So it's your obligation. It's not. I'm not saying it's your obligation, but it's your right. You can do it. If you want to vote for somebody, go do it. But the opportunity is there. Go for it.
I think it's pretty well everything we had.
All right, well, I appreciate you, gentlemen.
No problem.
Thanks for coming, and